All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the BXR podcast. Today we got our regular co-host PopQ down there in the corner, and we also have our special guest Gashnor. He's joining us to tell us all about Halo modding and all the goodies there. So, hello everyone.
What's going on?
Hi.
Well, Gashnor, before we hop in, why don't you give everyone a little introduction to yourself in case they aren't familiar with you.
So I am a pretty new Halo modder in all reality. I started when the Halo 3 mod tools came out just over 2 years ago, I think. I've made a Curse Halo 3 ODST and Curse Reach recently that came out about a month ago now, I would say. And I've also made a couple other just silly things like a little grunt campaign mod for Halo Reach. And if you've been in the Halo community for a while, you've probably seen some of my stuff over the last decade, I would say, just for little videos and stuff that went viral over the years. But yeah, nice to be here.
Cool. Yeah, nice. Thanks for joining us. Well, we can go ahead and just hop on in. I figured first things first, since you decided to grace us, we could just talk about a little bit about your mods, Halo modding in general. Because I mean, I've played a good amount of Halo mods in my life, but I've never really tried. I remember one time I was there. Someone put the tags for like a pistol on Nexus. This was back before the workshop, but they didn't put like a mod that actually had the pistol in it. And so all I wanted to do was play like the H3 campaign with the CE pistol, and I was trying to use someone's tags to like plug it in. I had to use like I don't know, whichever the tool was, and I gave up. It wasn't I couldn't get the map to compile. It like crashed a couple times, and that was it for me. But yeah, so what kind of inspired you to get into Halo modding?
I mean, I've always been into Halo in general. It's been my main game franchise, I feel like, for years, since I was like 14. And I had always wanted to get into some sort of game development. And when the Halo 3 mod tools were being announced, I just on a whim decided, well, I'll just give it a shot, try to explore, figure out what it's about. And I just kind of got sucked into it. And I was working as a software engineer full time and just had a need for a hobby, I guess, especially 2021 where things were getting shut down and opening up and you weren't sure what was going to happen. So it was just this nice breakthrough into a new hobby to figure out if I can do this type of thing or, if I have that capability.
Yeah, that makes sense. What made you decide to go kind of with like the cursed style of overhaul mod?
That actually wasn't even intended initially. I was just messing around with weapons. I just wanted to see what I could do. And as I would post more and more on the Discord server that hosts the Halo mods sharing,
Mm-hmm.
People would start referring to it as just making little offhand comments of Curse Halo 3 and things like that. And I I knew a couple people before had released a Curse Halo 3 and a Curse Halo Reach, and I just thought that it would be just like those, where it would kind of maybe gain a little traction and just kind of fall off. And I didn't expect it to actually go anywhere else. I was just making something silly.
Yeah. I feel like there's such a spectrum to the cursed Halo mods. Obviously, there's like the OG, the one for CE, which is like insane like quality levels. And then I feel like there's a whole spectrum of like there's ones like yours that are super high quality, and then there's some that I've played that are kind of just like they messed with a bunch of numbers and they made the weapons act funny.
Yeah,
But
and it's so hard to make something that's gonna be fun too. Um, there's so much. Yeah, like you said, it's a spectrum. You can do some really silly ideas, but if it's not good or if you don't take that time to optimize, it's not really going to go anywhere. And even for Cursed Reach, the last 6 weeks or so, I was just hardcore grinding, trying to just optimize and find bugs and polish and do everything I could. And it was a lot of time. It takes so much time to actually polish things up. And I get why people would release something that was kind of half-assed for the most part, because that part sucks. The last 10% of polishing things up is terrible, but it's so pivotal to make a good experience, I feel like.
About how long, start to finish, does it take to complete a Cursed Halo mod, like Reach, for
Um,
example?
so for the Reach tools right now, I think I'm about 900 hours,
Jeez.
but that's not including time put into Blender
Wow.
or like GIMP for image editing or any of the audio editing. So for what I did, it was probably all in maybe like 1,100 to 1,200 hours.
That's insane.
That.
That's more hours than I have in Infinite since it came out.
Oh, me too. It's yeah, it's crazy.
Actually, that might be. Hold on, let me check. That might be more hours than I have in MCC on PC. To be honest, it'll be pretty close. Let's see.
It's the mod tools have become one of my most played Steam games just
Yeah,
because
I
of
can
how much time it
imagine.
takes to make these.
All
Wow.
right, it's okay. I got 1,300 hours playing MCC, so we're still a little
Okay,
ahead.
so I'll make a couple patches and I'll catch up.
Exactly, yeah. Especially because I'm not my MCC playtime isn't really accumulating much these days. But
No,
yeah, well,
kind of a
so
dead game.
how do you overall? I mean, obviously you've now used the H3 tools, you've used the ODST ones, which I assume are similar-ish to H3, and then the Reach ones.
Pretty
But
similar.
how overall do you feel about kind of like the state of Halo modding?
I wish, I kind of wish Infinite hadn't come out when it did because I think there would have been a lot more focus on MCC and that would have drawn a lot more people, I think, to modding. Because MCC is still it's kind of the population's fallen off, right? There's not a lot
Right.
of people playing as much anymore. There's a lot of complaints about cheaters being rampant on that for months now, and there hasn't been much change on that. And in general, I think people after Infinite's release kind of just that was almost the straw that broke the camel's back where they walked away from Halo.
Yeah.
And it seems like both games just suffered from that. And because of that, Halo modding is kind of pretty niche right now. Um, and then on top of that, Halo modding is kind of difficult because it wasn't ever intended to be a game that was modded, I think. And when you look at how Bungie designed the games, how they designed the data systems, where it's using these tags that are basically loaded into a map as they're needed. Like you don't have the entire game available at all times, but it was done as a way to really heavily optimize. As far as I consider this hypothetical and what I'm assuming for it, but it seems like they did it to optimize for the original Xbox and Xbox 360 with their limited storage and everything. Because you look at the full file size or the folder size of the Halo 3 modules, and it's like 16 gigs, I think. But the entirety of the Halo 3 campaign is like 3.5 gigs.
Oh, okay.
So they compromised really heavily, but it was a really strong optimization for the time. And the problem is when you're doing something for Halo modding, if you want to do something simple like your example where you're trying to import a different weapon in from a different game, right? That still requires you to rebuild the entire map. Or if you
Yeah.
want like the CE Magnum throughout the entirety of Halo 3, you have an almost 4 gig download if you're using the optimized file systems,
Yeah.
or it could be up like a 6 gig download just for one new weapon. Whereas something like Left 4 Dead, it's what, 50 megabytes?
Yeah, you just kind of drop the weapon in depending on.
Yeah,
I mean, I
and
feel like
you
a lot
can't
of other
really do
games
that.
are
So
like that too. You just kind of drag and drop the
yeah,
specific asset or the specific file. But
and because those games were designed around modding
yeah,
versus optimization, it's kind of a hard thing to get into because there's so much you have to do just for one little change.
yeah. Well, honestly, with that in mind, it's kind of insane they even went through the effort to. Obviously, like they gave us the CE tools like way back in the day when they did custom edition, and then they kind of just revamped them a bit for MCC. But it's kind of crazy when you think about how not made for mods the rest of the Halo games are. I mean, CE too, obviously, that they actually went through the effort to create all the mod tools. And then on the flip side, like you were saying, it sucks. Like I understand, like hearing you explain it, it makes sense probably why it took them so long. But like on the flip side, it sucks it took them so long because when I remember when Reach dropped on PC on MCC, mods were blowing up, but obviously there weren't mod tools at the time, so like they were really primitive. You're talking like I mean some of the mods were stuff that people had modded into the 360 before, so obviously like That's nothing compared to the mods, like nothing compared to a mod like you could create now with the tools. But those were the mods that got like hundreds of thousands and tons of views because that's when everyone was playing. And by the time we got all these tools, especially for 3 and Reach, which would have been like the big ones probably, it was like so late, and it's so unfortunate because you can't go back in time and change that. But like we've talked about it before on the pod, but like I do really wonder if MCC had launched with mod tools day one. I think the game would have like I don't think there would have been as big of a player drop off because I think people would have maybe like they would have gotten a little bored of matchmaking or whatever because it's you're still playing the same game from 2010, but like they would have had like a plethora of super high quality mods and they could have played all this stuff, whereas like back then, I mean, you had like the more basic overhaul style mods.
Yeah, and at the time, I remember even seeing. I would watch people. I would watch people like Rejected Shotgun, um, his streams just to see what he was able to do because I was just always enamored by this concept of adding new stuff or modifying Halo. And I remember it got to a point in 2020, maybe late 2020 or 2021, just before the mod tools dropped, where he was able to figure out how to import custom models. Like he was able to get the Halo Wars to banish Scarab into Reach. And that was a huge progress because before that you couldn't even add a new model. Everything had to be what existed in the game already. And you could kind of modify some models, you can modify some numbers and values on it, but you couldn't really do much beyond that. So yeah, the options people were able to do were really limited, but yeah, and even if it dropped with MCC on PC, it still takes time for those quality mods to come out.
For
and
sure.
It's hard looking back because you realize how much they had to do where they possibly could have delayed Reach releasing on PC, right? They could have done something with that because they still had to set up Steam Workshop support if they wanted to have the really accessible way of downloading, or they wanted to make sure all the mod tools are solid. And because this is a controversial one, I think, but because they staggered the releases of everything, I think it was more beneficial in the end because the first tools that dropped were CE and Halo 2, I think. I think they went in order of the game's releases.
Yeah.
And by doing that, as each game was releasing, both mod tools and the actual game itself, they were able to know where the faults were and what they needed to improve on. So like by the time Halo 3, just the game launched, it was a super smooth experience compared to Reach. And the mod tools, as they got to Reach finally, there was a lot of progress that was made on that, and there were still some issues they had to figure out, but it was definitely helpful the way they did it. And I would love everything to have been there on day one, but they needed those lessons to know what was needed because these were Bungie's development tools. These aren't like custom tools they developed for the games. I think they had to go in and cut out server connections, make sure that's not talking to Bungie's system still.
Yeah.
But they had to do a lot of work for those in general, but it's still at its base what Bungie used to make these games, and they needed to know how that improved throughout the years, and I think that's why they did release by release, so they could see each new change that was brought in.
I mean, yeah,
I know as it's sorry, I was gonna say as it stands right now, I know it seems very unlikely that this would happen, but do you think that there will ever be the custom game browser for MCC will ever feature modded content?
I would love that. The hard part is if you look back at CE, that's the big example everybody has is, well, CE got it right, so why is it so hard for this? But CE was using the GameSpy network, which was already set up with servers at the time where I don't know exactly how it was to plug into their system and to set up your games with it, but a lot of that heavy lifting was done. And there's a couple things I really wonder about it. I'm trying to think how to word this specifically. So the server browser right now supports all the games. So if they do a custom games browser, it would have to be PC only. But also right now, the only PC mod support officially is on Steam.
Yeah.
So then how do they handle the Microsoft Store version? And would Microsoft allow them to do that sort of huge feature on Steam and neglect their own internal systems, because Microsoft's always been pretty strict about parity, it seems like, from what I've heard, where if a game releases on PlayStation, it needs to be the same quality on Xbox.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they would do the same thing for Steam, where they would allow this huge mod support only on that, but then neglect the actual Game Pass version, where people would probably throw a fit over that. Honestly, rightfully so, I feel like. So I feel like it's hard to say, because I'd love to see it, but I feel like there's a lot of variables in that they would have to figure out what's the best approach, or if they do want to just lock everybody to Steam for that.
Do you think console is something that would be holding that back? Because, if they had mod support for custom game browser on PC, they might not have it available for console as well.
Yeah, and that's another thing too that I think comes down to that how the mods are handled on Halo, where you have this, like, Curse Halo Reach is 8 gigs, I think, 7 gigs, something like that. So they would need to build an internal system and have server space that's capable of hosting all of these mods. And I don't remember what the values was, but I had looked through something. I think it was the Minecraft Halo 3 by Inferno Plus.
Oh yeah.
And the size of it was like 3 or 4 gigs or something like that. And if you assume something, I don't remember exactly what numbers I used, but it was basically like, if you assume 100 people are downloading this mod, and it's this size, and the server has to download that for them off of 343's internal systems, because I don't know how easy it is if they're able to tap into the Steam Workshop servers and host it there on Xbox. I don't know if it would have to be internal for that or not. It would be like several terabytes of data a day just to download one mod, and to be hosting that, and you have this constant cycling of players, where that could add up to being something like petabytes of data a day, depending. I don't know how popular it would be in MCC, but there would be a huge storage issue they would have to resolve because of how big these mods are.
Do you have any clue how Bethesda handles that? Because obviously, like, Xbox.
I think it's based on them designing the game around modding. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about Left 4 Dead.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you have a mod that's 10 megabytes versus a game that's 10 gigabytes,
I get you now.
It's just whew.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. No, I obviously, like, I feel like one of the biggest things that's held. I mean, obviously, like, when the mod tools came out. But the other big thing that holds mods back is, it's just a pain to play multiplayer ones with your friends. It's gotten a little bit better with the Steam Workshop. Before the Steam Workshop, my God, because I used to host modded game nights sometimes for videos, and I hated it. Like, I would get everyone to join the Discord. There'd be like 4 people that are like, well, how do I download the maps? And I'm like, go to fucking Nexus, hit download. You got to drag and drop the files. Someone would always join on Xbox. They're like, how do I join on Xbox? I'm like, brother, I'm gonna have an aneurysm. And there'd be like 20 people talking over each other at the same time, right, while you're trying to help one person. Like, that's why I stopped doing them. And then people will be like, why do you never host these anymore? I'm like, because it's a headache. Like,
it's a pain. Yeah.
And obviously it's gotten a little bit better with Workshop, and I think like people are probably more knowledgeable now because they've been out forever, and the people still playing probably in theory know what they're supposed to do. But even like, I joined sometimes like a Bisquick host. I feel like he's one of the few that still hosts like modded game nights for the Battlefront pack, and I'll join it occasionally. Like I joined it a few weeks ago, and it went like pretty seamlessly, but it's still like kind of a pain. Like you have to pre-install the pack, and then you have to show up the specific time they're playing, because otherwise it's not like you can find lobbies for anything. So if you don't show up at 8 p.m. on a Friday, you're not playing. And that's obviously like that's the reason like custom mods got so big on custom edition is because you could just open the browser, right? You'd be like, oh, I want to whatever the big mods were at the time. I wasn't much of a custom edition player, but like you just go through the browser and just click on shit, and then if you didn't have that mod installed on your PC, obviously it would install it off of whatever servers it installed it off of back then. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the custom game browser has also like de-incentivized people to make multiplayer mods, because I feel like there's been some really cool ones. There's the Minecraft one that you mentioned a bit ago, which is actually like pretty insane for what it is. Like I'm shocked that works in H3, but it's super fun. then there's like obviously the Battlefront pack, and there's been other multiplayer mods. Like I know Jaki has done like he did like his big mythic overhaul, and he always has like a multiplayer component. And I did at one point. Have you tried multiplayer with your mods at all?
Yeah, I built a very basic sandbox for Curse Halo 3, and then for Reach recently I added Forge World to it, but never really more than the one map, just because, like you said, it's kind of not worth it. It's not
Yeah.
really incentivized because why would you do that? It almost feels like more effort than it's worth, because even Forge World, I had to spend hours upon hours to get it to build because there's so much stuff in my mod. And I didn't want to really upload as its own thing. People might play it. Most likely, people aren't going to bother because you can't play with your friends easily. And
Yep.
it's, yeah, it sucks. I wish there were more multiplayer mods because that would honestly probably get more people into modding in general. But without that support, without the actual official support for it, it's a pain. And you were saying that you hope it's better because of Workshop, and it's a little better, but you still have people who join, and you go start the lobby and it says players are missing content, and
Yep.
then you always ask, hey, who doesn't have the content, who didn't download, and everyone's quiet. Okay, who has a black screen in the picture, who doesn't see this picture?
Yeah.
And they're just quiet. And then 5 minutes later, someone will go, oh, I was supposed to download something.
Yep. No.
Oh my god, it's
Yeah.
just such a pain.
Or people, you'll start it and they'll crash, and they'll be like, "Oh, I crashed." And then there'll be like 3 people that didn't launch with anti-cheat off, and like, yeah, it's always something. And like, I can't blame them. Like in other games, it is a bit more seamless. So like, if you're just coming from that, it makes more sense from that point of view. But it is definitely a bummer because I'm like obviously I love Halo, but I'm much more of like much more on the multiplayer side than the campaigns. Like a lot of the reasons I've even gone back in the past like couple years and played many of the campaigns is just to try out some of the different mods that people have made. But besides that, like usually I just play multiplayer. And if there was, I feel like there could be, if there was more incentive, there would probably be so many cool multiplayer mods that like completely overhaul the experience, fix things, make things, give you different experiences altogether. I mean, we saw that with Custom Edition, and it's a bummer that we'll never really have the opportunity, I think, to experience that, because even I don't, like you were saying, I don't think they will. They're not, at this point, they're not dropping custom game browser support for modded content. But even if they did, the player base is kind of gone now. Like they kind of missed the boat on that one. So you still wouldn't even like truly experience it. But I don't know. It's kind of a bummer, but at the same time, it's kind of cool because H3 Reach, these were 360 exclusives. Like you really couldn't like. There was never an expectation that these would be moddable video games, so it's kind of cool that we've even seen what could become out of some of the stuff you can make from these.
And honestly, for me, I think one of the coolest things was because these were the original development tools, obviously, again, cut down to some extent, but there's a lot of insight into how Bungie did a lot of things. And all these little camera tricks they did that are, I don't know if you ever saw the picture of, I think it was the original Star Wars, where they showed the painting that somebody made, and then they had the actor walk in a specific gap in the image to be able to make it look like it's this larger scale, that there's hundreds of people there, but it's like 2 people, 2 actors, and then it's just a painting. And to look at how the maps are handled and how cutscenes are handled, especially in Reach, there's all these really cool little perspective tricks they use. That's a really small stage that they set up, but it looks huge. They were so smart in how they handled and used their space that they had at the time. So to be able to use the mod tools and get into that and see just all the little tricks in general that they use, or how weapons are set up, or how everything's handled, and understanding the limitations and what can and can't be done, is just really cool in its own way to be able to have that access.
Yeah, no, for sure. That it's definitely pretty cool. Well, so obviously you have 2 mods that I feel like have been pretty successful. How as like as a mod creator do you feel about like I don't know, I guess I don't know if success is the right term, but like the install rate? Like how do you feel as the person who created them, how they did?
It's pretty shocking to me, because again, I had seen people in the past who have made Cursed Halo mods, and I think even I remember seeing a video of yours. I think in like 2020 that someone made a Cursed Halo 3, and it was a lot of like model manipulation and
Yeah,
making things look bigger than
I think
normal
I
or things like
remember
that.
that specific mod. I think I played it for a video and I was so annoyed by it I just never played it again. Like it wasn't fun.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I
and I remember
remember
seeing that.
specifically playing it, and in my head the whole time I'm like, okay, I'm still making a video and we're never touching this shit again because like it was just frustrating. Like I don't remember it exactly, but there's just a lot of bullshit, and it like yours do a much better job of obviously like there's a little bit of bullshit, but things are created to be fun. But like that one was just like shit was flying everywhere. You just die constantly. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and I think the hard part is expected when I released it, I thought it was going to be kind of that same thing. There might be a couple videos and it's going to fall off, but for me, it was just I made something that was kind of fun. I made my own sandbox. It was kind of cool. And even on release, it really wasn't great. Like looking back on it now and knowing what I know and what I've learned, it was really not well thought out. Where I wasn't thinking about, are people going to find this fun? It was, oh, this is kind of a funny idea, or I'm going to try to troll this person, and then people would do it, and it wasn't even trolling. They're like, this is stupid. So there was a ton of learning experience with it, but it. I don't even know if I just hit the right timing on it, or if I had it's hard because I don't want to get egotistical in my own head. I don't want to be like, oh, well, I made something that was really good, so clearly I'm good at what I do. I feel like a lot of it came down to the timing of it and being one of the first people to actually be able to make something like that. And so seeing where Curse Halo 3 has like 60,000 subscribers right now, I think, and Reach has hit, I think, 17,000 recently. Like, it's crazy to me, but people are I mean, I know they're having fun with it, but again, it's so hard for me as a person to look at that and think that it's because of something I made. I don't know. It's a really strange thought process to have because I made a couple of videos in the past and they went viral on Reddit or something, but that was it. I didn't expect to ever really make anything. So yeah, to see, I know I'm kind of rambling on it, but I'm really just trying to think of how to answer it. It's strange. It's really strange to see that support and to have people even recognize me in like a Halo custom game or Halo Infinite match. And it's cool. It's really cool, and I love the support I've gotten. But it's so bizarre.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes sense, and yeah, to your point, I mean I'm sure timing helps a little bit, but I feel like especially thanks to the success of Inferno Plus's mod, I feel like there's such like a there's such a market for the Cursed Halo mods because he did such an amazing job with his that people have always been asking like when's Cursed Halo 2, when's Cursed Halo 3 like from him. So if
Yeah,
someone's able to come in and actually make something like and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but like make something of equal quality or like approaching the quality of his mod, then there's going to be a big market for it because it's like there's already a huge player base of people. Like his original CE mod went so insanely viral. Like people who probably haven't played Halo in like 20 years probably like might have played his Cursed Halo mod. And so you have all these
yeah,
people that like, you know, if they see something pop up and they're like, "Oh, Cursed Halo 3, like this one looks pretty good." And they check it out and it's actually kind of fun, you know, they're probably pretty likely to like stick around and play through it and whatnot.
yeah, definitely. And I think because he had such a high standard too, that it held me in particular, at least, in a really high standard. And I know those other mods we had talked about, the other curse mods that were done, they were done through a program called Assembly. It's all
Yep.
community made. And it's it's really limited. You can basically just modify values for it. But they did what they could,
Hmm.
but it's really hard to meet that value without going that extra step. And kind of also going back to what I mentioned earlier of that I spent 6 weeks just polishing basically. And I was adding a couple new things, but a lot of it was just I needed to polish everything up. I needed to find all the bugs I could find. I needed to really stop and use every weapon individually and use just how a player might try to use it and try to get into people's heads. And there were still things I missed. There were still some concepts I thought were good, but then I saw people play, and that's just how I get my feedback without
Hmm.
having a QA team. Um, but he had such a high standard and still has such a high standard that I don't want to sully that. I don't want to come off as releasing these mods as trying to get like a quick 15 minutes of fame or whatever. Legitimately, it's just something that I want to make that's fun. And but yeah, I still feel like he's obviously the better one. He's the better modder. I don't have any question in my mind about it, and I'm not going to be insulted if people tell me that. But there's just this ridiculous quality in this bar that he set that needs to be hit, and I almost feel like in general for Halo modding, that almost needs to be the mentality across the board that there's this standard now that has to be hit. And I don't even think I even fully reached the bar. I think there's still things I fell short on, but I think things like that are really important in the modding community or in a creation community because it does hold people up, and it can hopefully drive people to be better. But the other side of that sword is that the community might start demanding more of people who just don't have those capabilities or don't have the time or just don't have the patience to do that. And that's also hard because it can discourage people from getting better if people download their mod and they expect this really high bar of quality.
Yeah, no, I kind of get what you're saying there, because sometimes if you play a few really high quality mods and then you download one that's like not crappy, but just maybe like a newer modder, or just someone that doesn't have as much time, and you're just like, yeah, this is pretty rough around the edges.
Yeah.
and then like, I don't know, a normal person just closes it. But there's always those people. I feel like modders get the, so maybe you've have some funny stories, but I feel like sometimes I see comments and stuff like on other people's posts, and I feel like modders get the weirdest responses from people. Do you have any
I feel like
funny interactions?
I had there was one that was kind of funny recently actually. Someone had commented on my Cursed Reach mod, and they asked me to make, I don't remember what it was. I think it was some battle out of a book, like trying to recreate this famous scene.
Oh.
And they specifically mentioned at the end of it, please don't add any cursed weapons, just keep it normal. And it's like, well, don't ask me then. Like, there's other people you can ask for that.
Yeah, I like the ones where people don't like what a modder has done, and instead of just not playing the mod, they just flame them. And I'm like, just don't play it. These are optional. These are optional additions to the video for free. You're not paying for any of this. Just don't play it. Like,
yeah, I've gotten a few of those. And when I first launched Curse Halo 3, it was so new to me, obviously, and I went in really cocky and confident, like I made something good. And like I said, looking back, there was a lot of little flaws with it. And to get those comments initially was really hard because you see it and you think, like, you take it all personally. You take it really personally. But now looking at them, when I get these comments, I can differentiate what's the proper feedback and what's just somebody who just had a bad time for whatever reason. And when Cursed Reach came out, there was somebody who commented with this really long wall of text saying that everything in this mod was a step down across the board from Curse Halo 3, and this isn't fun, and that's not fun. But they didn't give specifics about anything, just saying that, things weren't fun. And then they ended it with do better. And I was like, well, dude, come on. Like, I'm not going to, do you want a refund or what are you looking for here?
They want you
at
to
a point, yeah, it's like
them.
I appreciate the feedback. I genuinely appreciate when there's constructive criticism and there is feedback, and there are things that will challenge my thoughts of, I thought this was a good idea, and someone may not like it, and then I'll watch a stream and see and really focus on that element and go, oh yeah, people really didn't like this, and then I'll fix it. But when people just go in and rage, usually what I've seen the case of it is they'll go in on Legendary. They might put on a few skulls because they're really good at Halo and they know how to play, but they have no idea how the sandbox works. So they run in, like with Halo 3, with a dart rifle, and they're trying to act like a battle rifle, and then they're just getting massacred by everything.
Yeah, the dart
because
rifle,
they don't understand that it's an area of effect control weapon. It's not this precision weapon anymore. And they'll rage after 5 minutes. And there was another Twitch stream I saw a while back of Halo 3, and it was two people that are playing on Legendary, and they were on Sierra 117, and they got to the Sniper Alley section. where it's just the carbines and a couple of Gauss rifles, but they're playing on legendary, so there's more of the Gauss rifles. And they're just dying over and over and over again, and they're not getting in cover. They're just charging out, trying to just, again, play like vanilla. And then they let out this comment saying something like, "This isn't even funny. This is just annoying." And it just made me laugh because it was so... that's one of the things you just have to learn. Like, this isn't something I've done that's upsetting them. This is just how they're playing that's upsetting them right now, I can tell. So whenever I see those rage comments, I think of that one video of just being really cocky on legendary, trying to run through, and then just getting annoyed that you're not able to play the same way that you're used to, and you just have to discard it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine that must be difficult, because I think, like, even vanilla video games, a lot of times the highest difficulty of a game is bullshit. Like, if you are completely new to Halo, like me as a child, you launch up Halo 2 Legendary, fucking bullshit video game, right? But you just have to learn how to play it properly, and you can make your way through it. But you can't, if you only played it on normal, or you never played it, you can't just run in with whatever weapon you want, you know? It's basically like you're using the plasma pistol and a precision weapon the entire game, pretty much as you can. And, like, I imagine, you know, you download a new mod, you have your preconceptions based on the regular video game, and you just run in, and, like, even not cursed mods, I feel like it's not a problem. It's just you're playing a different video game, right? So, like, you're playing an overhaul mod, you launched on legendary, well, the enemies are different, your weapons are different. So, like, if you're not used to that at all, and you're just running in trying to play it exactly like you would regular, obviously it's going to be a little frustrating. But I will say, with most of the curse mods, like yours or Inferno Pluses, I don't even bother on legendary because they do just piss me off, which I realize is like a because I'm playing it wrong thing, but it's also like I just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and you may not have the patience to want to relearn the sandbox. That's totally fine. I 100% get it. But when people lose that self-awareness and they think that it's a me issue and not a them issue, it always makes me laugh because, again, I can know when there's something I put in that I understand that was a bullshit mechanic. And most of the time when I see those videos of people raging, it's not from some bullshit mechanic. It's just they're not understanding the sandbox at all.
So am I wrong? I thought Cursed Halo was supposed to have bullshit mechanics. Like, I thought it was supposed to frustrate people with all the wackiness. Or are your Cursed Halo mods not like that?
So originally I had a lot more of those because I had the same mentality. I thought that was the same thing where there's going to be something that you're probably not going to like, but that's just because it's turning the concept on its head. So I, like, for Reach in particular, I focus so much on trying to just balance everything and to keep it as accessible as possible while still trying to come up with creative new ideas. And it's really hard to meet that balance, because even like me playing through Curse CE, there were definitely times where it was overwhelmingly frustrating. But I'm not going to get mad at him because of it, because I just know that's just the design.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I play Curse CE, there's the whatever I forget the name. It's been a bit, but whatever he's changed the Needler to, where it's those little fucking insects that like crawl around and chase
or
up.
whatever.
Fuck that weapon, man. That thing, like, oh my god, that thing was that induced so much rage in my life, because you'd be like low health, you haven't found a med pack in a while, that bullshit kills you. CE's checkpoints are fucking atrocious, so who knows how far back it's sending you, like. But you also, like, I don't know, you kind of go into those mods like kind of expecting that, right? Like, it is kind of like Pop Q said, it is a little bit of the shtick, right? Like, if you're looking for a totally like normal video game, there's probably other mods you should pick.
Yeah, it's not a balanced concept for the most part. There's going to be something, but I mean, this time around, I tried to focus as much as possible on, like, I'm going to make this as balanced as possible. I'm going to make every weapon usable. I'm going to just try to see if I can make it a more enjoyable experience. So I buffed a bunch of weapons from Halo 3 and tried to... But there's still the ideas of, like, running backwards, or the truck that drives in reverse, or active camo that you can only move while it's not active, or while it is active. And just these kind of silly ideas, but... that's why I brought up the comment of the guy saying that I made everything worse across the board, because in my mind the first thought was like, I know I didn't. I know I went out of my way to make every single Halo 3 weapon way more viable this time around.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. All
So
right.
I guess your philosophy with your mods is more of like you want it to be wacky but not too annoying.
Yeah, and just because of how Curse Halo 3 had launched, there were just a lot of complaints with it of things that were wacky, but then they were just not great. And even funny enough, I remember watching one of your streams of it, Arash, where you were playing it pretty early on, and there was a specific comment I remember from you that kind of influenced a lot of the decision. This isn't till I call you out. I'm not going to try to guilt trip you or anything on it.
Oh.
But it was like a legitimately good constructive feedback where I remember you said something like, "Is this a fun mod? I don't know. It's very well made mod, but I don't know if it's a fun mod." And that really skewed a lot of my perspective on what I was doing of like, yeah, I guess I kind of was focusing on the silly concepts, but I didn't think about how usable is some of this stuff.
Yeah. That's funny. I don't remember saying that, but I could see it.
It was a couple years ago.
It sounds like something you would say.
Yeah. At least you came on a day where I was being nicer, because I've probably flamed some shit much worse than that when I was tilted.
typical ARS shitting on modders.
I usually I bite my tongue pretty well when I'm playing a mod. I know what I'm getting into, but I get a little tilted when I play video games. I won't lie. I remember one time I was playing some H3 mod, and it probably not the modder's fault, but like it was this long ass mod, and like the checkpoints didn't really work, and at one point it just fucking crashed. I'd wasted like an hour, and I don't even know what the end of it was, and I was just tilted. I was like, God, motherfucker.
It's like, no, this ain't fun anymore.
Yeah, I think I was like, yeah, we're actually done playing that mod, so we're moving on. We're not going back in. But yeah, well, that's cool, man. Well, there were some questions on Twitter specifically about your mod from different people. We'll get to those. I do have a couple other questions, but one lighthearted question: what inspired you to turn the Xboxes into weapons? Because those are fun.
So that was actually never intended either. So right now I have the little Series X weapon. The only reason I even made this was because I just was kind of bored one day in September or October, and I just wanted to teach myself 3D modeling. Like I've never been great at 3D art. I've never known how to do 3D modeling, and like things like the dart rifle or the quad sniper. I took an existing model and I did a couple parts and moved them around, or I extended the barrel. Like it wasn't this complex task I did. And I just really wanted to make it something that I had sitting around. So I just started modeling the Series X. And then afterwards, I imported it into Reach just to see if I could get the materials set up right to make it look accurate. And then at that point, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just see if I can make it a weapon. And I remembered that Phil Spencer meme of him holding the Series X like rocket launcher or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, that's fun. I'll make that into a thing. And I posted it on Reddit because I was really proud of how the model came out. And then I posted it on Twitter, and that kind of blew up. And then a couple days later, I woke up and I was looking through my Google News feed, and there was a Yahoo News article written specifically about the Series X. And I was like, oh, that's really weird to see an article on my news feed about something I did. And so then at that point, I was like, all right, what else can I try to do? And tried to model a 360 because that was my favorite Xbox console generation.
Oh yeah.
And I thought for sure that was way out of my reach. I thought it was way going to be just too hard for me. And I looked around online to see if there were any free models of that I could put in or anything. And then eventually I was like, screw it, I'm just going to try to model this. And it just turned into this thing of like, okay, well, I have two generations. Let's just do the other two now. Let's get the original Xbox and the Xbox One era and just run with it and see what we can do. And then from there, I just tried to think of what a fun weapon idea would be, like the 360 firing quadrants and the 1S firing discs. And it all just kind of built up naturally from that of just one day me trying to just teach myself how to model better.
That's super cool. Yeah, those are, I don't know if I'd say they're like my favorite weapon, but like they're definitely like one of the coolest in the Reach mod, just because like how often you get to kill people with a console.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I have way more fun weapons, but the 360 replaces the concussion rifle, so I tried to keep it of a similar behavior of the sandbox to keep it not break things too much. But yeah, it was just I know they're not the best or most fun. They're really just kind of generic explosives or whatever. But I feel like they filled in some gaps in the sandbox at least.
It's kind of the
It definitely
novelty
looks
of them.
unique.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
every time I'm watching Cursed Halo gameplay, like I'm watching it on your cam right now, I feel like I'm constantly seeing something new, like at all times.
This mod
And-
has a stupid amount of content in it, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Right. And like at what point do you call the mod finished? You know, like is it
That's-
hard to, you know, choose a spot to call it?
That was a big issue. I was just constantly pushing my scope when developing this, and at a point there were so many things I wanted to add still, and it got to a point where I was like, I can't do this. Like it's obviously free labor. I'm not getting a bunch of money off this. I had set up a Patreon afterwards just to see if I could get any sort of support for it, but at a point it's still like I'm putting in 100 hours this week or in 2 weeks span, and it's not really worth it at that point. Like I'd love to be able to add more. I'd love to be able to develop this indefinitely, but you at a point really have to cut yourself off. And my big thing was, as long as I replace the original sandbox, and as long as I replace all the original vehicles the best I can, and just try to make it what already existed, there's not any of the really vanilla content in there. So that was my big scope cutoff point. But there were still more things I would have loved to have tried to figure out.
Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah. I can imagine that would be hard. This I don't know if this will be like a controversial question or you can just dodge it. I mean, you said you launched a Patreon, but do you think that there should like exist more models for modders to be able to like drive revenue from their mods, or do you think they kind of work best as is, where it's like mostly just a fan creation for fun? Sometimes maybe you get some YouTube ad rev, sometimes maybe you get a Patreon sub here and there, but like for the most part they are just like a hobby.
Yeah, and I would love to be able to see, and this isn't even just speaking about myself. There's a lot of modders in the community that I know have made some really great stuff. I'd love to be able to see them make money for what they've done. One person in particular, we were talking about the multiplayer stuff earlier, and I meant to bring this up. I've seen him in your streams before too, but Nextzilla.
Yeah.
He makes some of the most beautiful Halo 3 maps I have ever seen.
They're really cool.
Stuff like that, I would love to be able to see even an official implementation where 343 can add like, I mean, you can't really do paid DLC now, right? Like people are so used to the maps being added for free, so I don't think you could really charge people for it. But just to be able to see some sort of addition where people like him could be able to get some sort of support for these really well-made maps for multiplayer, or even Inferno Plus, like he for sure drove sales of MCC.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Just, and if there's this, the hard part though is how do you define and how do you decide how much has been contributed by the modder, other than you just have to look at subscription count and have like a set scale or something. I don't know.
I mean, it'd
be nice.
That's how Epic does it, right? With the UEFN, like it's all based on engagement and like concurrent players. Now I understand that Epic Games and Fortnite's in a much different financial situation than Halo, but I there is like a world where it is possible. Like they clearly like all those games, and maybe I understand, like I think it's not a perfect model because it's all based on concurrent players and like playtime, which kind of like fucks over people who don't make like multiplayer style UEFN creations. If you make like a single player thing and someone plays it once and never plays it again, you don't get as much money as someone who makes like box battles and there's people playing it every day. So it's not like a perfect model, but like at least they have something set up. But I mean the same thing that we're talking about here kind of applies to like forgers in general, like in Infinite or whatever the Halo game of choice is at the time. And I don't know, I've always thought it would be like cool if there was a like streamlined way, because not everyone wants to make, because there's like forgers and modders. I mean, you talked about Rejected Shotgun earlier. Like there's people who do have like good sized channels and like good sized brands based around their stuff. Or obviously Inferno Plus is like the obvious one. Like his channel is pretty big and like his videos do numbers. But like not every person has that like in them to want to do that. And even if you do, like, you're already spending like all this time creating the mod or creating the map, like you probably don't also want to have to be like, all right, well, here's more than just a trailer, or like here's like regular update, like regular content, right? Because that's the biggest thing with, like, if you want to make any decent money off of ad rev, you can't drop one video in a year and like call it a day, right? Because even if that one pops
Yeah.
off, you're still not going to get that much.
Yeah, and that's definitely the hardest part, where this mod took me a year to make. So
Yeah.
I can't really rely on ad revenue, but it's something that early on I had to just put in my mind that I don't want to have the mentality that I'm doing this for money.
Yeah.
I want this to just be my own little passion project. And I've seen streams where somebody called me out for Curse Halo 3 because he didn't like how it was, which totally fair. I'm not really offended if it's not everyone's style. But then he was just trying to rationalize why I called it curse, and it's like, well, I like curse stuff.
Yeah.
It's not a deep thought process. And he was trying to assume I was doing it for a quick cash grab or to get my name out there. And like, no, really, like genuinely, this is
I
just
can't
something I
imagine
wanted to
the
make.
cash grab portion was too big.
Yeah, that part made me laugh. I was like, oh man, if you knew.
Yeah, like how much time you spend versus like the return. Like, brother, calm down, all
I
right?
I think I did the math, and right now I'm just under a penny per hour
Hell
that I put
yeah,
into
dude.
this.
That's good.
So I'm making some
Mm.
big bucks off this, big
I
cash
mean,
grab.
if you keep it up, you'll be buying a McDonald's meal soon. No, I don't know. It's a hard topic because obviously, like, I don't know, the way to monetize it becomes funky, and I don't know.
Well,
It's
and there could be legitimate people doing quick cash grabs where they
for sure.
really just pump out content just to try to get people to try it quickly. And there might suddenly be a million curse mods that have basically nothing changed on it, but they got a bunch of quick downloads so they can get a dollar or two off of it. And there could be some real weird side effects to it.
Yeah, it'd probably be hard to police too, because like with the abundancy of free models too on the internet, like how many people would just rip a bunch of stuff, throw together a mod,
Yeah,
throw it on the workshop, get their $20 and call it a day.
yeah.
But
And using
yeah,
someone else's content, yeah, it's just it's tough. So it's one of those things that I would love to see modders be able to get money back for that. I mean, I've seen streams where people are encouraging their friends to buy Reach just to play, or buy Halo 3 just to play. And like, oh dude, it's just $10, go buy it. And their friend will join them a couple or like an
hmm
hour into it or whatever. So there's part of it that is really cool, that like I know I've sold copies of MCC, or at least of Halo Reach or Halo 3 or whatever, but I I understand why it's so hard for them to not pay that out. And again, I'm trying to stay in the mentality of I don't expect that to happen, and that's probably okay.
yeah, yeah. Well, that makes sense. All right. Well, what's kind of the? I mean, obviously, I think you're still updating the Reach mod currently, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to just do little patches. I usually watch different Twitch streams or YouTube streams just to see. Like I said earlier, I'm the only real QA person on this, so it's hard to
Oh
be the
yeah, yeah,
solo developer and the solo QA and all this stuff. So there's things I miss, and there's things that I'll get feedback of how people play and adjust them. And so I have another couple items to patch soon, but I think it's slowing down pretty quickly. It's not. I feel like I really thought this out pretty well this time around
yeah.
to make sure that things were in a lot better state this at launch.
I was gonna ask that actually. So like, as someone, most mod, well, not most, but like a lot of mods are kind of a solo endeavor. Like, as one person making a mod, is really your only way to get feedback is just kind of like tune into videos and streams and just kind of hope people like say what's on their mind.
For the most part, because of some of the fame, I guess, from Curse Halo 3, I have some notoriety where I was able to reach out to people and get
Mm.
some proper feedback this time
Yeah,
around. So I was able to do play testing this time in co-op, whereas with Curse Halo 3, I would have my wife play, or some like old high school friends, and
yeah,
they wouldn't really be as knowledgeable about Halo, and they'd have fun, but there were elements that were still missing, like huge gaps they'd have to wait and see. Where that game took or that mod took probably a year to really fix up to being in a really good point of just slowly changing things. I didn't want to do these drastic shifts. I wanted to kind of just take feedback bit by bit. But for Reach, because I was able to have one, the prior knowledge from what I did in Halo 3, and two, having actual people helping me, it was a lot easier to figure out some of those issues. And again, I still miss some. There's still ways that people play that I'm not going to be able to foresee, but a lot easier this time around, definitely.
You've talked about how long you've worked on the Halo Reach and Halo 3 cursed
Mhm.
mods. Has there been any mods that you've worked on for a really long time and they don't get that amount of attention that those mods have?
No, Curse Halo 3 was literally the first mod I ever made.
Oh. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think definitely because of the name, there was more people gravitating towards it, and again, I never expected it. I just expected, oh, I'm just gonna release this silly mod, and I'll probably get like 100 subscribers and whatever. So that had a bunch
If
of,
that is all you got, like 100, would you have still worked on the Halo Reach mod?
probably not, honestly. I,
Hmm.
I feel like I probably would have, but I don't. It's hard to say because I had fun making it, but it
Right.
depends on what kind of feedback I got, I guess. Like a lot of
Hmm.
the Halo 3 feedback was really not too mean early on. It's really when, honestly, a lot of the more mean feedback I got was after Curse Halo again was put on Workshop because it
Mhm.
pulled a lot of his market over a lot of Inferno Plus's market. And because it wasn't the same style, I think it made people upset about it. And it was really weird. I don't even really know how to explain it. There was just this weird phenomenon that once he posted it there, I had this huge influx of negativity coming through for a while.
Huh.
Um, so even if I had 100 on Halo 3, I probably would have kept tinkering around, but I don't think without that attention, I would have made it as good.
Right. Right.
And there were people like Hidden
That-
Xperia who played Halo 3 really early on and seemed to genuinely love it. And that helped a lot too of having, I mean, in general, having somebody with that huge of an audience playing it was shocking. I remember the
Yeah.
first day loading it up and just being like, what the hell?
Yeah, no, I
Uh,
can imagine that's like super cool. You just like load up and like some big YouTuber, like big streamer, it's just like playing your mod. Like that must be like super cool.
yeah, it was wild and actually enjoying it. And like recently, Uber Nick played
Hmm.
Cursed Reach with some friends, and he was having a blast on it, and that shocked me too. Where it was just, it's funny though because it's fun to see them having fun, but there is so much anxiety when a bigger streamer plays because if they don't like it and they just stop, it's like, oh, that's so damning.
Yeah.
It'll just destroy any flow that you have going. Any sort of momentum will just be cut off instantly.
Yeah, no, that I could see that too. I mean, I imagine what you feel there is the same thing a developer feels for like their video game they're selling, right? When
Yeah.
they load up and or especially like indie games, maybe not so much AAA because I feel like
I'm sure there's some developers in AAA games though that have the same reaction. I
I
know there's some really
I'm sure.
passionate
Oh, I'm sure
developers that
there are,
would.
but there's probably like a bit more of a disconnect because you've done less of the game per se. But I
Yeah,
mean, they
you'll only
still
have done one side of it,
so
maybe just
like
UI or sandbox,
yeah,
whatever.
exactly. But like even then, I mean, I'm sure like we'll just use this as an example. So sorry if you listen to this, but like if you were a developer that worked on Suicide Squad and you like loaded up a stream the first week that game came out, I imagine it was pretty rough. but like, but yeah. I imagine what you're feeling there is like the same, like an indie game drops, like one or two people or like handful of people made it and they like loaded up a big streamer play, Moist Critical's playing their game because he plays like random stuff sometimes. And it's like, is he going to like it? Is this going to like skyrocket the game or is this going to die, like be dead in the water?
Yeah, or they find some weird abstract bug you hadn't seen, and
Yeah.
suddenly that's breaking things. It's crazy. Yeah, I was so excited to release it. I was so happy when I finally called it a point and had it built and did testing and didn't find any major issues. And then I released it, and within 24 hours, there was just this almost regret of like, I don't want the public to see this yet. I don't want people to play this.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to deal with, but you just have to disconnect your brain from that and not, again, it comes down to to being able to differentiate between constructive criticism and people just being hateful. And it's definitely a tough thing to do, but it's you just have to look at the people having fun also, and not just focus on the negativity of it.
Yeah. That makes sense. You know what your mod made me realize would be really fun, and I'm not saying like I'm not telling you to make this because I know it'd be like a ton of work. But you know how you have like the 3 or 4 different versions of the AR in Reach that have like the different levels and stuff.
The like Borderlands.
I want like a full Borderlands style Halo overhaul mod. Like that would be so much fun. But
it would be really cool. I think setting up the actual like text thing over it wouldn't be too bad with each weapon. I did have to kind of go in and try to calculate the DPS, so there'd be a little work for stuff like that.
yeah,
But it'd be really cool to do. I've always tried to think about how to do the like when you're shooting in Borderlands or Destiny, where the numbers pop out showing how much damage you dealt.
yeah.
And Halo doesn't really have an easy way to do that. Like, there's no native way to say, "Hey, pull this damage value out." But you could, you'd have to go really deep and do a bunch of research on your own. But you could look at like the damage states of this type of weapon and how much damage it deals against this type of material, and then when it impacts with this material, you spit out this text value. Like, there'd be so much manual work to do to get it to work, but I think it would be doable in Halo at least.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. All right, well, what do you think? Obviously, you said you're still
I
you're
just saw
still
yours this
no,
stream.
yeah, you're still updating a little bit. What's the future for you involved for Halo modding or just in general?
I really want to try to learn Unreal Engine. A lot of the drive behind Reach in particular, and kind of continuing to develop Halo 3 and ODST, was that early support and that early feedback of people actually liking what I had gave me some motivation to think, well, maybe I can try to see if I can try my hand at games. And I have this little idea that I'm probably not going to talk about just because I haven't used Unreal Engine yet, and I need to see what's possible before I start bragging about this grandiose idea I have. But
You
I,
got to keep it in the lock too. You don't want someone to steal it.
yeah. So I have a concept I want to try to learn and to see if it's even possible, and it might turn out to be something that is just too hard for me to do by myself, and I'll either have to reach out to people. But my thought process behind it is I'd love to get into game development in general. I'd love to be able to do like sandbox design for a shooter or something like that eventually. And if I have something like this, if nothing else, it's a portfolio item. And if it does well, then I can hopefully support myself to make other stuff in the future.
So, as
Yeah.
someone who kind of started, like your first real steps into like game development was modding, do you think that's like a good ramping point, or do you think like if you were to go back, would you just start with Unreal Engine, or would you, if someone new was starting, would you recommend like, hey, it doesn't have to be Halo, but like pick your favorite game, maybe play with some mods in that, and then once you kind of feel you've gotten a good hang of that, maybe then move to like an actual engine.
I feel like for me, it was easier, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, of that I know when Halo 3, when Curse Halo 3 launched, it was not in a good state, and I know that it could have been way better.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had just jumped into game development, I probably still would have had that kind of cocky mentality of, no, this is a good idea, you're wrong, I'm right. And I think I needed that feedback. And in general, there was so little modeling skill on my part that a lot of these things I've learned, and really trying to focus on how Bungie set things up and really trying to focus on how players play games. I needed these 2 years to really just watch how people play, I think, to know, because I think if I had jumped straight in, it wouldn't have been a good concept at the end. Um, so for me, definitely modding was more helpful. I think there might be some people that jumping straight to Unreal Engine might be better. It's it's also hard to say because I feel like I had a really unique experience where I got lucky that my first mod gained traction. But I think being able to just create something and to be able to critically analyze what you've created for modding is a lot easier because you already have most of the game there. You're just changing some values around. And it can be a really small scale mod, it can be a really large scale mod, it doesn't matter. But as long as you're pursuing something that you feel like you really want to get into, if nothing else, modding is a really good intro step to see if you even have the drive that this is something you actually want to do.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right. Well, I think that kind of covers that. What do you kind of feel is like the future of Halo modding in general? Like, where do you see it being in like a year, 2, 3 years from now?
I think we're still going to have people who are putting out these little passion projects, but I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be ramping up. I feel like there's still new people joining the modding community. I still see people in the Discord server who are trying to figure things out and learn, but I don't know how long the content upload is going to be going. There's part of me that thinks that it could be something that just is already coming to a trickle and dying out, but I still see on Steam Workshop there's still so many new mods coming through right now, which is great. And I like to think that hopefully someone will have played one of my things and go, oh, maybe I'll look at the modules and figure that out and try to keep things going because it is really fun. Like to be able to make something of your own and be able to just come up with these weird ideas like a falcon made of traffic cones is just these really it's really liberating in its own way. It gives you this crazy freedom. So I would hope that it continues, but there's part of me that's a little doomsday on it that doesn't feel like Halo necessarily has the support for that right now to really incentivize people to make mods for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking like the popularity of the modding scene for Halo going forward is probably contingent on the overall, success of Halo going forward.
Yeah,
So, but I mean,
and
because
it's
Halo, in and of itself isn't in a great spot right now. So, by
it's a bummer
extension, the
because
modding scene isn't either.
after Infinite came out, there was this huge drop off for the franchise as a whole. It feels like because of that launch, it killed so many fans' motivation for the game. And MCC saw an
Mhm.
immediate drop off because they moved to Infinite and then they were just over it. And it hasn't really recovered yet. Where I hope that they can. My biggest desire would be that they allow console mods somehow, and that Halo MCC is one of the next games ported to PlayStation, just to give it an immediate fresh
That would
audience.
be cool.
But right
Mhm.
off the bat, having mod support out the gate, having a custom browser out the gate, it would be it would help a ton. It would give so many more
Oh
people
yeah.
motivation to be able to make stuff. But as it is right now, where it's mostly just on Steam, it doesn't have the best chances, I think, of surviving.
Right. And I
Yeah.
mean, these are these are old Halo games, Like
Yeah,
the fact that they're as popular as they are like today, like I mean, that's just a good thing in and of itself. I mean, these games could have been completely dead a long time ago. So,
yeah, and it definitely helps to have played these a lot early on. And I was mentioning earlier about how cool it is to see how Bungie handled stuff, but it's really weird knowing how intimately I know this engine now, and I know there's still things that I have no idea what to do, but it's really neat to be able to see, and I would love for people to be able to dive into it a little bit more and see how these are done and to be able to just see what people can come up with. I think mods are a really cool insight into how people think, that you can just see what they're most passionate about and just what they're able to create. It's a something that you don't really get in AAA games or even indie games because there's
mhm.
still some guidelines that they have to hit. But being able to have just full reins and full creative control is really cool.
Right.
I feel like you also get away with some stuff in modding. Like you do a little copyright infringement here and there. Not you, but
Yeah,
uh, some very fun mods definitely pull from like other games, right? That like if you were releasing a game, that definitely be a no go.
yeah, and it's funny because when
Right.
I released Curse Halo 3, there's an agreement on the workshop that says you will not release copyrighted content.
Yeah.
You can be really specific on it. So I was really cautious, and I didn't want to copy anything. Like everything was completely original. And then when Cursed Halo again came out, and it had full-on Mario Kart tracks,
Yeah.
and then 343 promoted it, I was like, all right, well, I think that's kind of more of guidelines at this point. I don't think they really care that much about
I
it.
think it's there to cover their ass. So if
I
Nintendo
think so.
DMCA's them, they just tell you to shut it down. Like,
Yeah.
so that they're not liable or whatever. I imagine that's the only reason it exists. Because yeah, otherwise they clearly don't care. I mean, yeah, Cursed Halo again. There's all sorts of mods on that, like on Nexus and Workshop that break the EULA.
Yeah. I think Nexus is fine from it. I think they're a little more lenient on it, but Workshop, yeah, I think it's to protect 343, like you said, and I think also for Valve in general, they want to make sure that, hey, if you're using this service and Nintendo comes after us, you guys are held accountable for this.
Yeah, and I mean,
Mm.
I I haven't, maybe there's been a case, but I feel like when you make a mod and you like you do something and you piss off like a Nintendo, the worst thing that happens is they just shut it down. I haven't seen,
Yeah.
I can't think of any stories or anything like worse happens. It's not like the Switch emulator where they get sued for like millions. It's just like, oh, you put Pokemon in Power World? Yeah, shut that down.
Yeah.
Get that off.
Well, yeah, because they had done that in Minecraft at one point. They had a Pokemon in Minecraft mod that got shut down by Nintendo,
Yeah.
or like the GTA 4, Liberty City, and GTA 5, Take-Two shut that down. So I mean, there's always some risk to it, but and the only thing I really did this time, I think, was the Star Fox stuff from Nintendo. Everything else was just my own separate thing, but it's there's risk to it, but I think as long as you're I don't even want to say if you're being cautious. I think as long as you're just under the radar, and Halo is so under the radar that there's
Yeah.
there's always a chance that you're going to be in trouble, and I don't want to encourage people to throw copyrighted content in, but it definitely eased my mind a little this time around to be able to add some more stuff.
You're definitely playing with fire. I mean, like you said,
Yeah.
Halo's pretty small compared to other things these days, but you really have to it has to go mega viral and probably put a company in bad light for them to really care, or like infringe on something they're doing, right? Like, not that this would ever happen, but if someone took like the Halo 3 engine and they like released MW3 or something, like that would probably piss off. Well, Activision, I guess, is owned now by Microsoft, so maybe they wouldn't care. But if it was a different video game, you get the point. But like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I had thought about that for a bit too, of adding Halo weapons in Call of Duty Zombies or something like that. I understand where they have that in, that they don't want people having access to the original assets now and just throwing them into every other game, because then that can sully the value of Halo. But it seems like for the most part, yeah, as long as you're not doing something just horribly controversial with it, I think it's for the most part okay. But again, never a zero risk situation.
yeah, for sure. There's always. I mean, it is. It is against it. So you're
Yeah.
at the leeway of whatever lawyer shows up that day at work, I
Yeah.
guess. But I mean, I don't know. I guess that's kind of the risk you take. But all right, well that's cool. I forgot what I was gonna say
I
next.
did want to ask you, Gashnor. I don't know if you've messed around with all the mod tools for all the games in MCC, but if you have, what would you say is the hardest game to mod? I feel like it's Halo 2, but I don't know for sure.
I think it's Halo
So the
4,
first
isn't it?
game, right before the Halo 3 mod tools came out, when they got announced, I messed around on Halo 2 mod tools just to see and get a feel for it. And I just made this stupid little weapon that was it's like the Halo 2 Magnum, but it would rapid fire needle rounds or something like that. And then going into Halo 3, it was pretty much the same tool set, but I think there's some issues with the tools where they might crash more, but I know 343 did some patches on the mod tools. Like reach tools when they first came out were almost impossible to use. It was such a nightmare. The Halo 3 mod
Ah,
tools when they came out, the map Crow's Nest, the second level in the campaign, if you added basically anything to it, you couldn't build it. It was just maxed out.
oh,
And they ended up adding these extra memory limitations that people could use, and they fixed a lot of the crashing and reach, and there were some big things. So I feel I would be shocked if Halo 2's mod tools were still um, like temperamental like that.
hmm.
In terms of what's most difficult to use, even going from Halo 3 to Reach had some weird issues, but everything I've used, so I used the Halo 2 mod tools briefly, I used Halo 3, ODST, and Reach. And jumping from Halo 3 to Reach was kind of a huge transition where there were things that worked really easily in Halo 3 that in Reach is a nightmare to handle. Like if you make a custom vehicle in Halo 3, you can go to the animations and say, "Hey, attach the character's left hand to this marker," and it does it pretty seamlessly. But in Reach, you have to set it up in the actual animations. So there's a lot of animations you would have to
Mm.
export the entire thing into Blender, set that up, re-import it, and then set everything back up like how Bungie had it, so all the other animations don't get broken.
Hmm.
And it's a pain, but I think it's one of the things you have to look through in the lens of Bungie did this because they were setting themselves up for Destiny. This was again never meant for modding,
Yeah.
and they had their own internal system. I'm sure made it 10 times easier than what we have right now.
Yeah.
So Reach tools were, from my experience, probably the hardest to get used to. There's a person in the community, Crisp, who developed this community tool, and it before that, when people would try to import a model into Reach, it would come out really jumbled. Like the head would be down by its left foot, and the arms would be all over the place because you have to do this special process because of how Bungie changed the system of what models they're using. And without his tools, legitimately, I would have modded Breach. It would have
Gotcha.
been too much of a pain.
Huh.
So it's hard to say, like, because of that, Reach is actually way easier, but as it stands by itself, the Reach engine is by far the hardest right now. I've heard the Halo 4 engine is difficult to learn, but that and the Halo 2 Anniversary engine, they're basically, the same engine but expanded for H2A.
Yeah.
I've heard that's one of the best engines to use. It's just, I guess, really well made. And despite people's complaints about Halo 4, the actual engine work they did seemed to be just fantastic.
I mean, that kind of
So
makes sense
probably
if
as
you
it
can.
stands, I feel like Reach is probably like the hardest to use right now.
I don't know. I just said Halo 2 just because I feel like there's not. I feel like I don't see a lot of mods for that
There's
game.
really not. I think a lot of people were like me though, that they were excited. That you also have to remember the Halo 3 mod tools are new, and the Halo 2 mod tools came out in 2004, 2005, something like that. So they've had access to them in the past, and I don't know exactly why people don't use it as much, but I feel like a lot of it is there's just more excitement for the Halo 3 tools.
And I mean, Halo 2 and MCC, like, I think that's the only game that doesn't even have any, like, weapon or player skins. It doesn't even
Yeah,
have that.
yeah. Reach doesn't have weapon skins, but you obviously have all the model customization stuff that they even added new models to. But yeah, Halo 2 really didn't get a whole lot of love, and I didn't use it enough to know much about it. I feel like it'd be interesting if you wanted to dive into the Halo 2 modding scene to get Vengeful Vadam to see if he would, or Vadam, or however you pronounce
Yeah,
it.
and I mean,
Yeah.
that's a mod. Uncut. Yeah,
Yeah.
the uncut mod. I'm aware of that. So there's definitely some cool mods, but I just, compared to the other games, I just feel like I don't see much for Halo 2.
I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest.
I
I
feel
think
like
that's the only Halo 2 mod I could even name. Plus,
I
like
would have
maybe
to
some
guess that
multiplayer
it's just
maps.
excitement. I really can't think of why else. But again, it could be something that as people got further into it, it was just really difficult.
Well, who's making Halo 2 or Cursed Halo 2? Who's doing that?
No idea. You want to do it?
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get Pop Q in there. He loves to finish projects, so we'll get him in there. He'll work on it for like 2K hours and never release anything. So. All right. Well, let me ask you this. This is kind of a hypothetical. I feel like going into Infinite, there was debates like if Infinite would or should have, any type of a mod support, and I feel like most people understood it wasn't really gonna, since it was a live service video game. But like, to spin it on its head a little bit, like, do you think that Infinite should have had like actual mod support? I don't know if you've messed with it much, but I think you can do some shit with like assembly, right? Or there's the IRTV tool, which is like tag editing that you can do. But besides that, there's not a whole ton of Infinite mod stuff you can do.
Yeah, it would be. I think this hypothetical depends on one thing, and that depends on the Infinite Foundation itself having been strong enough to be able to push out to the community. Because at launch there was I think it was mostly rumor and hearsay basically, but there was a lot of discussion that the Infinite development tools were just really hard to work with. That people would start uploading changes and go to lunch and come back and it would have crashed like 45 minutes in or whatever. So, and that combined with how the quality of Infinite has been for the last 2 years makes me think that that's probably more true, that the engine is just not in a great spot right now. So, hypothetically, had Infinite launched in a really good state and the engine been solid enough to give to modders, I think that would have been really cool. I would have loved to see what could be done. Um, but because they've only pushed out basically one weapon in 2 years, I feel like there's something still really difficult under the hood that hasn't been resolved.
Was it
I
really one weapon? I
yeah, it's just
thought it
the
was at
They
least
added
two.
well,
they
it's the
added a
bandit,
and then a
bandit plus
bandit
the bandit
variant.
with a
Yeah.
scope.
Oh, the Bandit Evo. See, that's
Yeah,
two.
Yeah, yeah,
that's a
That's
variant. I'm
two.
not calling that its own weapon.
that's two. You know, we got them,
It's
dude.
a bandit with a scope.
And hey,
Two completely different weapons there.
but they're both still in the game for some reason. So when I pick up the regular
Hmm.
bandit, I'm always like, this is fucking annoying. Why isn't this the
Yeah.
Evo on this map? But all right,
And
well,
then
yeah,
you run out of ammo on one and you can't pick up ammo from the
yeah,
other because they're
that's
two separate weapons, even though they're the same
yeah.
weapon.
I'm sure the scope makes it take different ammo type.
Yeah.
Nah, yeah.
So
All right.
annoying.
Well, that's fair. Well, I think that kind of wraps up like talking a little bit about your mod and stuff. There's some questions on Twitter that we'll go through that are specifically for you. But before we hop into those, like, what are you? I mean, I'm not asking you to like flame Halo or anything, but like, what's your like current opinion on like just the state of Halo? Like, do you still actively play like multiplayer or anything like that?
I've been playing Infinite a little bit since the update. It's by far the lowest played Halo. Even Halo 5, I think I have double the hours in it than I have for Infinite right now. Um, it's better with the networking. My biggest gripe the whole time by far was been the network quality. I just couldn't stand how it felt. But since the network fixes, there's a lot of glaring issues, and it feels like the sandbox was designed really heavily around those network issues. And now that the network's resolved, the sandbox feels really weird. And there's things like being able to strafe without inertia, where people just kind of gyrate back and forth really quickly every gunfight is really frustrating to deal with. Or the Needler taking like 18 rounds to super combine now instead of the 12 it always used to, or whatever the values were. It feels like they did that because you used to have this 1 to 2 second delay with the Needler hitting you that otherwise you wouldn't be able to react, but now it feels like it just takes forever to even take somebody out with it, or the plasma pistol feels completely useless and doesn't track. Like it just feels
Yeah,
like the whole game is so disjointed of this almost Frankenstein contraption of the old network model, but then you have the new game designed around the new network model, but then there's the bandit was kind of thrown in and they're trying to adjust the commando and BR around it, and it feels really incoherent right now to me.
yeah. I don't disagree
And
with any of
I would
that.
love to see I'd love to see. Oh, the other big issue I have with it right now is just skill-based matchmaking. I can't stand how the matchmaking works in that game, especially doing solo queuing. I get stomped on so much when I play.
Yeah.
The
I
game does not put me against better teams
I don't
or easier teams.
I don't disagree with you. SBMM sucks, but that's just like an industry wide issue. I also feel like it's worse in Halo because of the population. Like
I think that's definitely an issue with
it
it.
doesn't
I think
help
that's
it.
part of it. Yeah, but it's so frustrating going. Like last night, I had a game. I went 18-1, and we only won by like 2 kills. And it's just like, dude, I can't play like this every game. This is
Yeah, well, because
not.
I think a lot of that is like team balancing because they have to, since it's trying
Yeah,
to get you lobbies, it tries quote unquote to like make balanced teams, but you end up with like really fucked lobbies where like, you know, there's like a good player on each team, or maybe there's like a few average players versus like one good player, and you're like, this isn't fun for anyone. Like, Even like
Well, yeah,
well,
in that game I went 18-1. The lowest person on the game was like 0-15. Like, how
hell
is
yeah,
that
I'm sure
fun
they're
for
having a
that
good time.
person? How? Yeah,
well,
that person is miserable.
MCC does that weird team
Yeah.
balancing shit. I mean, it is so common on that game when you're to have one player on each team that gets like 30 plus kills, and then all the other players on each team single
And you know
digits.
what's
Like that is
crazy
very common.
is they added that system in 2017 when they did the fix MCC marketing thing, whatever that was. It didn't used to have that skill-based matchmaking, and it was a lot more lax, and it used to be just really relaxing to play. And then when they did that update, it got really sweaty, and I didn't understand it until recently. I saw that that's when they added skill-based matchmaking into it, the current system. And
Ah.
it's the same system Infinite uses right now, and it's a nightmare for me. I hate it. 'Cause
Yeah, whatever that is, that's horrible. Like that
yeah,
is just not good.
like I have a kid. I'm exhausted at the end of the
Yeah.
day. I am not ready to just sweat. I'm not in that mood right now. And it's honestly
Right.
pushed me away from multiplayer games because it's just not a fun system.
I feel
Right.
like it's a lot of like modern Halo. It's why I don't enjoy social anymore. And all it really leaves me is ranked, because ranked is supposed to be sweaty, so like I get what I'm supposed to, but like you can I feel like I can only play like so much of infinite ranked before that tilts me. And since I don't have like the social fallback, like I just don't play the game. Like because I
Yeah,
know if
and
I
I feel
load
like
up
ranked should have that. That's
yeah,
fine, but
yeah,
I
for
hate it
sure.
everywhere else.
Agree, yeah, agreed. Because like if I load up a BTB game or like a Team Slayer game, the teams are always fucked, and I'm like, half these games aren't even fun. Like,
No, it's and again, it's I think there was a Mint Blitz video actually that talked about it, and the logic behind the system is looking at the bell curve. And the concept is, well, the most average players are going to have very balanced games, but it's incredibly flawed because the people above average are trying to carry the people below average. So then the people above average are miserable because they have
yeah,
to work twice as hard. The people below average are miserable because they cannot do enough to meet up against this team.
mm-hmm.
And then there's like 5 people in the whole lobby that are having fun. And it just feels like such a flawed, uninteresting system to me.
They're going 10 and 10. They're like, this is fucking great.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a whole debate about just multiplayer games in general, and I feel like like obviously like I don't know how much you pay attention, but like I feel like this year we're seeing so many like PvE games just pop off, especially from like smaller and indie developers, and like I feel like a lot of it is just multiplayer fatigue. Like we're all old, we're all tired of like if I want to play COD, I just want to load up a COD lobby. I'm not trying to fucking like, not that I can't do it, but every time I load up COD, I'm not trying to play like an S&D ranked lobby. Like I'm not trying to play like money eights out here. Like I'm just trying to like sit back, use some shitty weapon and play S&D, but like it just throws you into fucking just full cracked lobbies every time. Like everyone in the lobbies rocking like their top 250 skin from 2 seasons ago, and I'm like, brother, what is this?
And I don't even think it's necessarily being older. I think even a lot of the younger people getting into gaming right now,
Yeah.
or like in their late teens or whatever, I think it's just not a fun system for them, that people are realizing with these indie games now of going, oh wait, this is actually really fun.
Yeah. Just
Not
load up
realizing that 10 years ago this was kind of
yeah.
the standard, that games
Yeah.
were built for fun and not this like psychological team of
Oh, fucking, I
analysts
hate
that
it.
went through and said this is the best spot to do it.
I think the worst thing that's happened to gaming, obviously, like shit's gotten greedy and that sucks too. But the worst shit is that we have like social engineers trying to engineer how to make like you have an algorithm that makes the game more enjoyable. It's like, just make a fun fucking video game and I'll just play the video game. How about that? How about you just make a game where if I'm bad, I can enjoy it? Because when I played Halo 3 and I was dog shit as a kid, I still had fun. So like I understand there was like a little bit of true skill back then, but like it's nothing like it is now, right? And I don't know, when I played like my first COD game as a child, I think it was the first one I played online was COD 4. I was dog, but like you could still have fun, but like
fun.
Yeah, but now it's like you're not even. Sometimes when you're playing these games, it's like you're not even playing a game anymore. You're just playing an algorithm. Like, oh, I wonder if this lobby it put me into is going to be a good one. Am I getting a bot lobby or am I getting a sweaty lobby? Oh, got a sweaty one. All right, try again tomorrow.
That's what's so annoying about it. When you feel like there's a system in place that's putting you in those matches. Like if it was just random and you just so happen to get put in a sweaty match, so be it. I'm cool with that. If it's random, some games you get sweaty matches, some games you're playing against players that are worse than you. Whatever. But when there's a system in place that's actually like forcing you to sweat every game, like that's when it's annoying.
Well, especially with Infinite, when you can look at the stats online and specifically see, hey, the server was expecting you to perform this many kills, this many deaths. And there was one game, I remember I had posted on Twitter, I went something like 2-16. Like I got destroyed. And then I looked on the stats online and it expected me to have 20 deaths. So I did better than it expected. It's like, why was that even a consideration for your matchmaking to put me in this game that it wants me to go 0-20?
I love that.
It's absurd.
That's great. That's great. No.
And I guess like the according to their data, like I think, Call of Duty, like Activision has talked about this, like when players are getting stomped, they're more likely to quit playing the game. But I mean, like we talked about, skill-based matchmaking definitely seemed to be a lot looser back in the day, and you still had plenty of popular games, Call of Duty 4, Halo 3. They were doing just fine with their loose skill-based matchmaking in place. So like, I feel like they're fixing a problem that isn't there.
Never existed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the biggest issue with modern gaming was at least AAA gaming, was the inclusion of all these different teams, of getting these huge marketing teams and the psychoanalyst teams for skill-based matchmaking, and the psychologists for microtransactions, and it just feels like everything became all about the psychology, like you were saying, the social psychology of everything. And they lost the part where's the passion of making the fun game. And there's one big example I've used a couple times with friends, and it bugs me with the modern gaming landscape, is Fortnite was very successful. And it was successful because they had a strong foundation of a game. They were able to build the battle royale in like a week or two and threw it out, and it turned out to be really fun. But because they had a strong foundation, they had a good game to build on. And then from there, they started monetizing, and they built up this monetization strategy and the season passes and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then all the other AAA companies, Microsoft and EA and Activision, everyone only saw they have season passes and they have monetization.
Yeah.
And they forgot the fact that there's this foundation laying under the game that's making people play, that's incentivizing people to play. And the monetization is just this added benefit where these people are having so much fun, they're willing to spend this money. And you look at Halo Infinite, where there's been 2 years of broken network. And I know some people experienced it easier, some people had it worse. I feel like in my experience, it wasn't the best. And it always bugged me seeing that. And then every week there's a new $20 bundle now, or a $34 super bundle. And it hits me the wrong way, because it shows what their priority was. And this isn't against the developers. I want to point out too, I can't stand on Twitter or anywhere else when people call the developers lazy or call them incompetent, because I don't think 343's developers are lazy or incompetent. I think it comes down to a mismanagement issue.
Yeah, it's all these decisions are made top down, right? Like, I'm sure, just like any company in the world, like there's probably some people that are amazing, some people that aren't, but like if your directive is, hey, we have this amount of people are going to work on armor bundles, this amount of people are going to try and fix the networking. Well, if you don't like prioritize that properly, it's going to look like you have brand new skins every week, right? And then there's always like but the people who work on the skins don't work on the networking. It's like, that's very true, but also like
there is financial Microsoft shifted money around where they got rid of those people that could have fixed it.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't feel like all the developers are completely free of blame when it comes to some of these issues. When it comes to some of these issues, because I do see devs on Twitter defending bad aspects of their game or pushing back on valid criticism of their game. So it doesn't always seem like it's just like this, oh, it's just the higher ups. All the devs are the devs and us are on the same page, and it's just the people up top that are causing the issues. It doesn't always seem like that.
Yeah, and I think there are some issues where the devs definitely are to blame. I think things like one thing I saw people blaming a lot was blaming the interns, specifically blaming interns or
The contractors.
the temporary contractors for their work on things. But I've worked at companies where you can have a high turnover rate, not because of bad company or whatever, but just because of contractors or interns or anything like that. And the code is fine because you have a really strong onboarding strategy, you have really strong documentation, you have a system in place that's easy to reference and understand this is what's going on, and you have good code review practices where a contractor can't just submit this really crappy networking model that suddenly breaks things and they have to go back 2 years or whatever to find where the issue was in it. And I really have to wonder how much of 343 was being mismanaged to the point that they didn't have this documentation, they didn't have a strong onboarding strategy, they didn't have a way to exchange knowledge when the contractors' contracts were over, and everything was just so separate where all these new people would come in and they didn't have anything in place to be able to share what they've learned or share what they did easily.
Yeah, no, I think a part of that probably goes back to like, obviously all speculation, but like we've
Yeah.
heard rumors, the slow space engine's hard to work on, the tools aren't great. Well, if you're cycling in people and it's already hard to work on and they're cycling in and out, maybe you don't have great documentation, maybe there isn't a great training program. Well, if the contract is only there for a few years and they spend half of that trying to learn how to properly do their job, well, that's not going to end too well either, right? But obviously, like,
Yeah.
without being at 343, you never really know what happened there. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, I've worked at major corporations and like I understand like, not every major corporation has good training procedures. So like, just because it's a company that has like a ton of money doesn't mean like the employees are really set up for success.
No. And it's
So
just that's my big gripe is blaming a dev if they lash out on something that's noticeably an issue. If somebody is complaining about the net code and a networking engineer comes out and says, "No, it's totally fine," and tries to gaslight you or something, then okay, yeah, that's obviously an issue to blame the dev on. But when people
Mhm.
blame the entire game as developer incompetence, I think it's such a statistical anomaly that the developers would be the sole cause of this. Because even if they were, management should have seen and they should have been on top of things to be able to say, "Oh no, this isn't right. There's some issues we need to fix."
yeah, no, I agree. It's especially with like a AAA company. I feel like there's so many developers, right? Like, what are the chances that like they're all bad? Like,
Yeah,
it's just unlikely. Like, these are people that went to school. Like, these are also people that go on to other industry jobs. Usually, like, clearly they must know what they're doing, and like, so there's a whole hodgepodge of things. Like they could be the best developers in the world if they were given shit tools. It doesn't matter, right? Like,
yeah.
if they were
My
given
biggest
And
gripe was Tom French. He was the person that was leading the Forge team in Halo 5. Or no, I think he was the Sandbox team in Halo 5 and then led the Forge team in Infinite, if I remember. And he was behind some of the best changes that Halo 5 got, like adding the ability for people to do the little, like, there's like a weapon pad glitch that you could swap different projectiles based
oh,
on.
that
oh
that
yeah,
was so fun.
Yeah, and I think it ended up being a bug, but they liked it
It
so much
was,
that they
yeah.
ended up embracing it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to build upon this." And then for Infinite's Forge, when that came out, his team was behind making sure that was a Forge functionality this time
Yeah.
around. And I just remember the communication he had during the Halo 5 era. Like, he was so passionate about his job. And I remember when he announced he was leaving 343, almost every single comment was saying good riddance. And it was like, why? He was like one of the best developers they had. Why are you saying good riddance on this dude? People were just in this mentality, and it sucks because it's going to drive the better developers, I think, out of either the industry as a whole or companies like 343. And then it's more likely to just be awful because the passion is going to be gone.
Yeah, I have said that for a while, that I think like 343 at this point as a company is like a cursed chalice. Like you go there and you
Yeah.
just have like a whole slew of fans that just hate your existence as a company. And so like your art, and I understand, like, hey, I'm not saying 343 has done a great job as a whole, but like you're already fighting such an uphill battle that you have to go above and beyond on the good side to even get like decent recognition. Whereas if you even make a minor fuck up, it's instantly like, oh, 343, 10 plus years, you suck. Like, so it's like,
Classic
but
343 moment.
yeah, but like for new developers that just joined 343, I mean, they haven't been there for 10 years, right? Maybe they
No.
came last year and they're like, yeah, I got here, Infinite was kind of fucky, but we've been trying to fix it, right? But like there's only so much they can do, and then yeah, like I don't know, like social media is just a shit place. I feel like
It is.
you should flame like the name of the company, fair game. Flame the super upper leadership, because it all like everything should fall up to them. Like if Infinite's a bad video game, that is the lead's fault. It doesn't matter if it was actually their fault, it is their fault because it is their job as like the lead developer on a game, right? But all like
Yeah.
the regular developers, man, like who knows what they actually had an influence on? Who knows what was their fault, what wasn't their fault? Like you shouldn't be flaming them specifically. You shouldn't be like happy when they leave or like sad. Well, you could be sad, I guess, if you know they did good work. But like we shouldn't be flaming specific developers. Like they're just a developer. Like no one, like when you work a corporate job at like Walmart corporate and you leave your sales role, like people aren't flaming you on Twitter. Like it's
No, it's the same energy as going into a Target and getting pissed off that the sale price changed and you're yelling at this cashier. Like
yeah.
Oh, I do
they
that all the
had
time.
All right, well, fair enough. It's hard. It's hard because
But
I'm
no,
like
I do like you mentioned, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but I feel like a lot of people act like they do know when they don't. Like
oh, for sure.
they just say shit like, "Oh, this is the reason like Halo is in the spot it's in," and like they don't actually know. They act like they have this inside information and they don't.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
all my assumptions are purely based, and again, are assumptions, but they're based on time working as a software engineer in the industry. I mean, you don't know, but
Mm.
there's probably something alluding to it. There's probably some issue, and like I said, that's why I feel like it's a management thing, because if the developers don't know what to do, that's not on them, because they still need to have guidance on what's this game you're trying to make, who's the game lead, what are you trying to make, and how can each team help that. And then lower than that, how can each team lead speak to the lead developer? And there needs to be this communication that I feel like something just wasn't being discussed properly, and it feels like the only thing they really focused on was the store, and I just don't.
Well,
I don't know. I honestly have no
I
idea.
think a lot of that comes down to like, and I've never been a developer. I've never even really modded a video game. I've never worked in like software design. Like I don't really know. But if I had to guess,
Not yet.
implementing a store and making skins is probably the easiest thing. Like it's just art.
I think
Not
it's
that
an API they literally just plug into.
yeah, not
I
that
think it's
art
something
not that art
Microsoft
is
said.
easy, but like there isn't as many layers to it that can get messed up or get stuck in some type of development loop. Like there like you just make a cool skin, you're like, oh, looks cool, you put it in the store and you sell it to people, right? Whereas like, hey, let's make a new weapon, or like, hey, let's overhaul the balance of this. There's a lot more factors that could go into like what could make that good, what could make that bad, what makes a good map in a video game versus like what makes a like skin that someone will buy. Like this, there's different. I feel like that's probably why you see so many like so much that gets added to the store where nothing else happens. But at the same time, we talked about earlier, I mean, again, that's resources, right? Like if it's easier to do that stuff, maybe you should have less people doing that. Hire more people that
And
do
if
this over here instead. But
if Infinite's hemorrhaging players, then it's going to be much easier to just have a team of 3D modelers
yeah.
doing what they need to do for the store. And then you can't focus on sandbox items because the only thing that's making the game profitable is just these couple of armor models every month.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a lot of it too. Like, for being honest, at this point in Infinite's lifespan, like as much as ever, like especially people who play daily, probably would love to see Infinite have some grand revival and be big. It's not gonna. And at this
I don't
point,
think
from
so.
343 or Microsoft's perspective, hey, we can not hemorrhage money. We can, we can focus on other things. Who knows what they're doing behind closed doors? But we can have this team of people that just puts out new skins that people still buy, still make some money, and like, yeah, maybe we're not going to add new developer maps. Maybe we're not going to add new weapons, new vehicles, but like we still have the resources available. We have a team here that can add in new armors, swap out new weapon skins, do an armor effect here and there, stuff like that to, keep things going, I guess.
Yeah, I think their focus was just wrong.
Yeah.
And I do really wonder what the next project is for 343. Like, are they working on the next mainline Halo game, or is it just some, side game, maybe a multiplayer only game? Because I just find it like hard to believe that Infinite comes out, it's it's in the state that it's in, probably not as nearly as successful as it could have been, and I just find it hard to believe that Microsoft would just greenlight the next Halo game. Like, okay, well, Infinite's a failure. Start
Yeah,
working on the
it's
next game.
interesting. For a 6-year, I mean, it wasn't a proper 6-year development cycle. I'm sure they weren't working on this from 2015 on, but a 6-year gap between Halo 5 and Infinite, and then it turns out to be a just catastrophic failure. And what's their funding like? Are they on like their final strike? I know Pierre Heinz or whatever his name is, whoever's the new studio lead for 343. I'm reserving judgment until I see if he's capable of making any other changes, but there's still part of me that fears Microsoft just has their hands so far down the cookie jar that you can't really budge anything. It's still going to have the same major issues. It's still going to have the same mismanaged resources because they're prioritizing the wrong things to get people playing.
Yeah, I mean, Xbox in general has done a pretty poor job with all their IP, so it's not like Halo is their only floundering IP, so we'll see.
No.
Maybe they'll figure it out, maybe they won't. I don't know, man.
Maybe not the only floundering one, but I mean that its downfall is kind of historic.
I mean, it definitely had the biggest highs, right? Like for all of their like internal IP, not stuff that they bought.
Highs.
It probably hit the highest peak, and it therefore had the furthest fall. But like, they've fudged a bunch of their other stuff, right? So I don't know.
Well, when you think of right before Infinite came out, when it was announced, and the classic graphics and how hyped people were everywhere. Like, it felt like genuinely people just want a good Halo game. They want
for sure
a classic Halo game back. And to have that much momentum and then releasing how they did, and they lost so much of the population almost instantly, which is crazy for multiplayer games. And then Battlefield also did the same thing at the same time, basically. They had a really poor launch, but they were able to fix it up in a couple months where it kind of bounced back a little bit. I don't know what Battlefield's at right now. I don't know its latest stats, but
it's back down bad. It recovered better than Infinite, but also like it didn't hit the same peak that Infinite did. I would say it's almost a wash. I mean, I don't know if you saw the news. They said that this is the last season of Battlefield coming up, so
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so they're also moving on. So like, yeah, I don't know. Battlefield did at one point, like, they had a big overhaul, kind of like mid lifespan that brought a ton of players back. Because I remember it hit like, I think it got back up above like 100K on Steam, but even that didn't last. Like recently, I think it's back under like 5 or 10K, and that's
still almost double what Infinite has on Steam, and obviously Steam has.
Yeah, I feel like at this point it's almost unfair because 343's done nothing with Infinite. Like the last true season, like the content update 29, 28, 27, like hey, props to him for doing something, but like at this point the game is in maintenance mode. Like there's no more, like there's nothing at this point that's going to bring
this is all part
back.
of the 10-year plan, Rash.
Hey man, we're going to be on content update 200, so or maybe like 50 by the year 10.
Stuck on my screen.
But yeah, all right, well why don't we do this? We've been going for a bit. We'll rapid fire out some of the questions people had specifically for you, and then we'll let you we'll let you get out of here. All right, this is a meme question.
Stuck with the pop-up ads. I'm just gonna. I'll just
Sempra,
leave that there. We'll see what it goes.
yeah, that's a perfect background. All right, Sempra asked this in chat. Would you rather have a Master Chief son or a Cortana daughter? I'll let you just take that as you will.
I need to interpret what the hell.
Hey, it's open to interpretation.
I mean, if we're being selfish, a Master Chief's son would probably be pretty quiet, right? Like he barely talks. Just be like, Dad, I need a pudding. And then he would just go off again. And you're like, all right, cool.
Hell yeah. That's perfect. All right. All right. Let me see. Let me pull these up. There were some actual legitimate questions over on Twitter. Let me just find them real fast. All right. What is like one weapon you wanted to make for your mods, but it never made it past the concept stage?
There was, before I made the AOL Needler, I was trying to make an icicle needler, and I think internally I still have it called the Needler Icicle. I wanted it to be able to freeze enemies and slow them down, but there's nothing that I could tell in the system. It seems like all the speed is controlled by animations, and you can't really on the fly change how things are animating and at what speed they're animating. So I ended up having to cut that one pretty quickly because all I had was just a blue needler that would headshot, and it was not very good.
Yeah.
There was another one too that I wanted to do, but it would have taken a bunch of effort on everything else. Was I wanted to make a weapon that while you're holding it, you run way faster.
Oh,
But
okay.
in order to do that, I would have had to basically what you have to do is you set the player speed globally up higher to whatever you want it to be. And then you set every other weapon that while it's being held moves you at like 50% speed or whatever you
Oh,
want it to
yeah,
be.
yeah.
So I didn't want to go through all 70 something weapons I have in this and scale those back down just for that one thing. It just didn't feel worth it.
Yeah. That's fair. Abyss said you can do that in H4 with like the slowdown.
Yeah, Halo 4 has some really cool stuff from what I've heard. It seems like, I mean, even like they got the Halo Reborn group, they I think got flood infection working through just some new scripting system that they added into the engine.
Oh.
It seems really powerful. The game engine itself seems just insane what you're able to do with it. I just don't want to learn another engine right now.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Abyss also asked what's your favorite color. He said it's very important. He asked it twice in chat, so I imagine this is pressing.
Probably a nice royal purple.
All right. Hey, that's a fair one. That's a fair choice. All right. Last question here. Someone asked, what's your favorite meme of all time?
Oh God. I know there's one that never really failed to make me laugh. And it was just maybe like 2011, 2012, and it's just a dog getting hit by a frisbee. And it's just the face the dog's making, like it didn't want anything to do with the frisbee. There's just, it's I don't know if I can find it. It's hard to really explain that without really showing it. But I don't know why it gets me laughing like it does, but there's just something so silly about it. I don't know if that's showing now.
I see it. Yeah, I see it. It says hack behind your head.
It's just this goofy. I don't know. I don't know why that one stuck to me, but this, yeah, like it wanted nothing to do with playing. Just got hit. I don't know though. There's been so many good memes over the years, but it's all shifted so much that I really don't remember much. Like there's been such an overload of memes in the last decade, really, and even the transition of everything, where it seems like every single week there was new something coming out, the new big meme that people are focusing on. I don't know. It just feels overloaded that I really cannot distinct too much behind that. I just remember laughing at the dog for whatever reason.
Fair enough. All right. All right. Last actual question, and then we'll wrap up. Semper wants to know what your thoughts are on Halo CE.
I'm assuming they're talking about Curse CE.
No, he just means vanilla.
I mean, I all the Halo games, I love them.
But CE specifically.
I mean, that was the first one I played. I remember getting an Xbox with my brother. We saved up for it and we played through it. And there's something about it's weird. It's such an anomaly for Halo because all the other games feel pretty similar. Like if you do Halo 2 all the way to Halo Reach, it feels like Halo. But CE was this, it feels really different, right? I'm not the only one that thinks
Oh
that. It's
yeah.
just such
I mean, for the trilogy, it feels different. I feel like going from CE to 2 to 3 is more of a true line than like 3 to Reach to 4 to 5. Like those have bigger
yeah,
jumps, in my opinion.
yeah. And I think it's more because CE added proper physics and they
Yeah.
had um the movement was really floaty in CE where you would jump and
Yeah,
you
for
just kind
sure.
of fall, like you could do a crouch jump onto a ledge and you just slide off of it. But there's just something so charming about it still. And I love the darkness of that game. I like how gritty they kind of started getting with it. And Halo 2 kind of had that a little bit, and then Halo 3 almost feels like it cut that back a little and made things a little more friendly for whatever reason. But there's something about CE that just feels really disturbing, I think, because of how they introduced the Covenant initially, and then you see they're pretty brutal, and then you get to the Flood and like the open chest cavity and the Elite in the cutscene, and they kind of
Mhm.
went really hard into it, and then as the game gained popularity, it feels like they slowly scaled things back.
Yeah. I get what you're
Yeah,
saying there. All
I feel
right.
like it's definitely the most unique of the series.
It definitely feels. Yeah, they probably maybe figured some things out as they went.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, the fact that it was supposed to be an RTS and then a third person shooter,
yeah,
and then they
it
settled on
went
first
it
person
went through some
shooter.
things.
Yeah.
But
But
all right.
there's just definitely that foundation of Bungie that's in there. That's I would love to see that kind of grittiness and dark storyline kind of come back a little more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel that for sure. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It was fun talking about Halo mods and everything. So,
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun.
yeah,
Yep.
for sure. It was a good time. All right, well, we'll kind of wrap up there. Thanks everyone for watching. If you're watching live, I'll probably get the VOD posted tomorrow. Maybe we'll see. Depends. It depends on how long it takes to render before I want to go to bed. But
Probably not.
yeah, we'll see. But I appreciate everyone for watching. We'll be back in a couple weeks. If there's a guest that you want to see, let me know somewhere. Maybe comment on the video after you watch the entire thing. No comments until you've watched every minute. That's how it works. But yeah, other than that, Gashnor, why don't you kind of tell everyone? And I mean, I guess you told people what you're up to earlier, but what should they look out for in the near future from you?
I'm definitely gonna be doing little fixes to Curse Reach. I don't know how soon this will be, but I would like to patch some of the Curse Reach stuff back into Halo 3 and ODST, but it's definitely a process backporting, so that might be a little bit of time. But in the meantime, I might just have a little bit of silence as I try to work on other stuff, and I'm going to see if I can learn Unreal Engine, and who knows where that'll go. But we'll keep people updated on Twitter and YouTube and anywhere else, I'm sure.
Fair enough. All right, Pop Q, what aren't you doing these days?
What aren't I doing? Well,
Making
I'm
content?
not uploading videos.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm making videos, but I'm not uploading
Yeah, that
videos.
doesn't actually
So
count at this point.
that's what we're doing.
All right.
Got a couple scripts finished.
I don't know how you
Some
like.
recorded.
I don't know how you spend so much time making things and just never put it out. Like, I would drive me insane.
Because it just feels like it's too late, and I don't know. You work on it, it's like you get tired of it. You want to work on something new, you know?
I mean, yeah, I guess fair point. But all right, well, that's gonna do it for the old pod. Appreciate everyone for watching again, and yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.